Have you ever tried to paint that blurry, out of focus background for a painting, but felt like you were just putting blobs of color on the canvas and weren't getting the result you wanted? We're going to talk about that today, so stay tuned. Hello everyone, I am Angela, the artist behind Clark Fine Art, and I make weekly videos to help you discover your artistic abilities. This is part 1 of a winter stay in the park, and we will be painting the upper 1/3 of the background for this. As we paint that blurry or bokeh background and blend with our acrylics, we're going to need paint, brushes. You can use acrylic or watercolor paper or a canvas and a palette. You can use Liquitex Basics acrylic paint. I prefer to use the Liquitex Heavy Body or the Golden Heavy Body paints, but you can also use the acrylic paint like you can get at your local hobby store. I'm using a Masterson's Stay Wet palette with the Premier palette paper. This palette has a layer that sits just below it that stays wet, and that helps keep my paint from drying out. So that's what you're going to see me use a lot of the time, but you can use many different palettes, whatever you prefer. Today we're using titanium white, unbleached titanium, or in my case, Titan Buff from Golden, and Mars Black. For the second part of this video, coming next week, you're going to also need a cadmium yellow and a naphthol crimson. For brushes today, you're going to see me using some filbert brushes as well as a flat brush and a number 2 synthetic hog liner brush, which you can get at your local Hobby Lobby. And I have linked in the description below the kit where you can find all of these supplies, including this makeup brush, which I much prefer over the artist mop brushes because it does not shed any hairs on your painting. So for the paper today, you're going to see me use the Arteza watercolor. It's 140-pound cold press, acid-free watercolor paper, and it happened to be what I had on hand. I chose this option because it's a very economical option for those of you who are just starting and want to try this out. One pad of this type of paper is going to allow you to do quite a few different paintings, and it will be a cheaper option than buying a bunch of different canvases. So today you're also going to see me use a drawing board that is secured on my easel. And I choose this so that I can take the paper and attach it to the easel with some acid-free tape. And that's what you see here. And I put about a 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch border around my pictures, my paintings typically. I used a 1/4 of an inch, and I went around the paper with the acid-free tape to secure that to my drawing board. I do this so that when I start working with the acrylic paint and the paper gets wet, it doesn't warp. You'll see, I'm going to tap this and you'll see it starts to get some separation, but because I have it taped down, it does not move. And then when it is dry, it returns being nice and flat. And this is a great way to make sure that your paper doesn't warp and shift on you. Tape off your edges, again with that acid-free tape. So here I'm going to take the flat brush and I need to start mixing up the color for my background. So take the Mars Black and I'm going to blend in titanium white, and I want to make sure that it's not my darkest value. You'll see here that I'm paying attention. I want to get a gray and not my darkest gray. That's going to come later in part 2 when we work on our trees in the foreground and our bridge. So to begin with, once I have my color mixed, I want to do the upper 1/3 of my painting. So I'm going to come down about 4.5 inches in my case, because this is a 9x12 piece that I have taped off. So about 4.5 inches will give me my upper 1/3. And I start just marking that off. I want to put in where my horizon line is going to be for my background. Now this color is a little too dark. So you're going to see me grab some more titanium white and blend that in. I want to make a lighter value here. And then I'm just going to start swirling that in. My goal here is to cover all of my canvas. I want to put this on in swirls because I want nice soft edges. Nice soft edges layered in with different values. You see here I've gone to a lighter gray with doing different values and continuing circular motions. It's going to help you blend in and achieve that blurry bokeh type background that you're going for without looking like you just threw blobs of paint here and there and everywhere on your canvas. So you're going to want to keep blending that through. And you see there, I'm showing my paper has pulled away slightly from my drawing board, but because it's taped off, it will not warp. When it dries, it's going to lay nice and flat again. So you see as I swirl this in, I've got all the different colors in that titanium white, that Mars black, and as they're blending into the gray, these are all swirled onto my brush. And I'm just going to go ahead and keep putting those in there, because as I'm laying this down, these are going to blend and mix together naturally. Now I want to make sure that I get right down to that horizon line, because as I come in with my snow in part 2, it is going to come up to that point, but I want a nice soft transition between the two. So I'm not worrying about if I go over the original line I blocked across, because I want that to be blended. And here, if you take some water and mix it in with your paint, it will really help thin it down some, help you get better flow and move it around. Because I'm using the heavy body paints, I can add water. And a lot of time when you add the water into your paint and you thin it down some, it'll even help you glaze it. So it makes it more transparent. That's what I mean by when I say glaze it on there. It's going to make it more transparent, allowing the layers underneath to show through. So as I build my layers, you'll see me dip into my water more often, because I want my layers that are coming in the next, moving forward, to be a little more transparent. So here I've just blended water again, and I'm going to keep mixing this around. I want my darks to show through, but I also want to just keep putting different values on there, different shades of this gray, to kind of build that up and create this nice blurred winter background. So another quick thing to note, when you're working with acrylic paints and you're looking at your reference photo, you want to look at what comes first, what comes second, what comes next, right? I want to go all the way to the deepest part of my painting, and I want to paint that first. So I'm going to look at here, I want to paint my background. Then later I'm going to come forward and paint my snow in the foreground while that's drying. Then I can go back and paint more in my background. So everything with acrylics is working in layers. So that is something to always be focused on as you're planning out your paintings. So here I'm just rinsing my brush, and as I rinse my brush, I have something in the bottom of my cup, and I'll show you right here. That's a paint puck. I have one in each of my water cups here. And the paint puck, as you see right here, great way to get your brush, your bristles really get in there and gets everything clean. And I do have a link to the paint puck in the description below. If you've never used one of these, I highly recommend it. These are awesome. They have that little suction cup, just sticks right to the bottom of your water containers. Really helps you get your brushes clean in between as you're changing from one color to another. So that link is in the description below. If you'd like to check those out, I definitely recommend them. So now I took a step back and looked at my background, and I decided that it was too cool. The background was just too cool. I didn't have enough what I wanted to be perceived as light coming through. And I wanted some light coming through in the far distance in the background of my painting, because yes, it is winter, but I needed it to be, I still wanted a little warmth. So here's where my Titan Buff, or my unbleached titanium, came in. And I'm going to mix that up with some of my gray, and just to kind of tone that down and add these warmer values. And using my makeup blending brush, going over those edges, just help really smooth that out and allow that gray that's already there to start to show through. So here I'm just blending through, putting on some of that unbleached titanium, or in my case Titan Buff. I am using the golden paint, and I want to add these values in. I'm going to mix up some darker tones again with that warmer versus the titanium white, using the unbleached titanium or the Titan Buff, and I'm adding that in because I want it to be perceived as light in the end of my painting. So I'm just going to mix these through, doing much what you've already seen me do in the first part of this video. And I'm just going to keep blending these different values And as I go through, and as you go through, if you feel that you have too much light or too much dark, just keep adding those layers. You're going to keep adding those layers. And you'll see here, I'm actually taking my filbert brush now, and I've dipped that into water because my paint is wet that's on my paper. My paint is wet. And by dipping that into the water, I can move that around and soften those edges. And I just want to soften where one blends to the other. So I will rinse my brush often to make sure that I'm not moving too much of the lighter tones into the darker tones. And here you're going to see I'm mixing up some darker tone because there's too much light here. I've got to bring a little bit of that dark back in. This is a winter stormy day. It's going to be dark out. So I'm just going to add some of that in. And again, you're going to see me just add a little bit of water to my brush and blend and work the edges of what I've got. And this is how you get it so that it doesn't look like you just threw blobs of paint. Right now, it looks like I have a bunch of blobs of paint on my painting, but I want to smooth all of that out. So I'm going to do that with blending, and I'm going to focus on blending the edges. Again, coming in with the mop brush, soften everything out. That gets rid of a lot of my brush strokes. And then I can come back in, just keep working with your lighter values and your darker values and mixing them through so that the edges are nice and smooth as you make those transitions from one tone to the next. And that is really the trick. That is the key to blending and creating that nice blurry or bokeh background that you're trying to get. Join me next week for part 2, where we will finish this painting as you see here. I hope you enjoyed this video and it helped you learn how to create that blurry or bokeh background for your painting. If so, please hit that thumbs up. And what is your favorite way to create a bokeh background? Drop me a comment below and let me know. I look forward to seeing you in part 2, where we will finish this painting. Hit that subscribe button to see more of my content and ring that bell and you'll be notified when part 2 is available. Thank you for joining me here at Clark Fine Art. I hope you will check out some of my other content. And until next time, happy painting.